everybody. Good morning. We're going to begin our program now, please. So my name is Jay Handel, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates for this fiscal year, and I want to welcome you all to Budget Day. It's really great to see such strong engagement from across the city as we have come together to participate in one of the most important processes that shapes the future of this city, our budget. I want to take a moment to express deep gratitude to those who made today possible. First, thank you to our mayor for her leadership during these challenging times and for being here today to support the work of the budget advocates. Her presence means a great deal to us. To Council President Dawson, thank you for ensuring we had what we needed here at City Hall, including access to the 10th floor rooms, the council chambers, and more. Thank you to Public Works for allowing us the use of their boardroom, and to Council District 5 for providing the much-needed tables and chairs, and of course our council member Yaroslavsky for being here and chairing the Budget Committee. We deeply appreciate the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment for granting us use of the 20th floor room, and a very special thank you to Carmen Cheung, our department manager at Dunn, for her consistent leadership and support throughout this year. A special shout out to John Donnell, Vincent Ottiero, and Eva Marinelli at Dunn, whose behind-the-scenes coordination and hard work helped bring today together, and for all of the Dunn staff here today supporting our efforts. Thank you very much. And we are grateful to ITA, LAPD, LAFD, Sanitation, General Services for handling permits, setup, logistical support. We couldn't have done this day without you. To all of today's speakers, thank you for taking the time to help us better understand the budget process, the direction of our city moving forward, and the impacts on our communities. To all the budget advocates who conducted department meetings throughout the year and helped draft this year's white paper, your commitment and countless volunteer hours are truly appreciated. Give yourself a hand. To our social media team, thank you for your work in spreading the word and encouraging participation citywide. Our charter says that's our job. Bring together the stakeholders and the government and have true transparency. And now with social media, it gets easier for us to do it. So thank you to the social media people. And finally, I give a heartfelt thanks to Kay Hartman for chairing today's event. Kay, your leadership, dedication, and cat herding skills have made the day possible, not to mention putting up with me. Thank you all once again. Let's have a productive and inspiring Budget Day. At this time, quick introduction of our mayor. Mayor Karen Bass has led the nation's second largest city with unprecedented urgency that has delivered results for all Angelenos. Thousands more unhoused Angelenos have come inside in her first year than the year before, leading to a reported drop in homelessness for the first time in years. Under the mayor's leadership, LAPD received record number of applicants while homicides and violent crime decreased. 100,000 more city services like pothole repair, graffiti removal have been provided. Thousands of businesses opened, hundreds of millions of dollars were secured through locking arms with state and federal partners as LA continues to urgently lead on climate. Mayor Bass was elected to make change for the people of Los Angeles by breaking with the status quo to deliver for the people of Los Angeles. My interactions with the mayor go all the way back to when she was an assembly member, and we worked on homeless issues together at the VA property in West LA. Very productive. So at this time, I am proud to present the Honorable Mayor of the great city of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Come on, need a little, come on, come on, come on. One more time. Good morning. All right, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear the spirit of the neighborhood councils. And, you know, when I think about the neighborhood councils, we're getting ready to go through charter reform. And neighborhood councils were born out of the last charter reform process. I remember that very well because I was very involved in it, very invested. But then it was from the community perspective, wanting to see neighborhood councils in our city. So as we launch into charter reform, I do hope that you will be active in giving your opinions, your recommendations. I look forward to reading your white paper. But in general, it's an opportunity in charter reform to kind of look back, to say what is working, what isn't working. I know many of you have been involved in neighborhood councils for many, many years. Some of you are new. One of the issues I think in the neighborhood councils is in some areas they're highly organized, very vibrant, a lot of community participation, and others they're not. And what can we do to increase that participation? So we're 6 months into this year, and what a year it has been. Oh my goodness. You go through day by day and say, what more could happen here? So we start off our year with the state's worst natural disaster in our recent history. I will tell you that for those people that are still out of their homes, it doesn't mean much when I say that things are going at record speed, that we have more than 500 permits that are underway. 300 have already been awarded, and what that means is that those people can start rebuilding right now. But a lot of other factors come into play that we don't have any power or influence, such as the insurance industry, that is a major impediment to people getting on their feet. And just when we thought that maybe we're on the road to recovery, then we get hit with our latest crisis just 6 months later. And in the matter of a day, our lives changed in the city. And I will tell you the irony is that the first part of the year, the administration was very, very helpful. And one of the reasons why things have gone by so fast, because they presented so many resources in the form of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And now all of a sudden that switch has been flipped. And now we are entering a period of uncertainty that's a little scary, not a little scary, it's very scary because we don't really know where this is going, how long this will last. We have thousands of federalized National Guards, U.S. Marines here for God knows what, because everything is going along okay in the city. But obviously, for the topic that you're talking about today, and our fabulous budget chair, I'm sure she woke up going, oh my God, just after you had resolved and presented a balanced budget and went from 1,600 layoffs that I had to present at the State of the City to around 600, and our goal is to get to zero. You put in all that hard work, first time chairing the budget committee, and now topsy-turvy, especially with police overtime and also with the vandalism that happened downtown, more protests coming, and I'm hoping that people will learn that the way to really bring about change is through nonviolent protests, exercising your First Amendment rights, but never resorting or devolving into violence. Having said all of that, we're 12 months away from the World Cup coming. And what does all of this mean in terms of how immigration is going to be handled when we invite the world in to our city, and will people come, or will they be frightened, or will they be, or feel that they won't be allowed to come in? So I just have to say that I am very grateful and thankful for the work that the neighborhood councils do. I know that the neighborhood councils took a hit in this budget, like just about every place else. I made a commitment to the staff under our great general manager, Carmen, that we would look for, I haven't told this to our budget chair, but that we that we would look for outside resources, for philanthropic support. And I will just tell you that yesterday I was on a phone Zoom with over 20 foundations that are looking at how they can help the city, especially the immigrant population who is now afraid to leave home. Parts of our cities look like ghost towns because people don't want to go to work. People are afraid to go to restaurants. I was in East LA on Father's Day, and at Mariachi Plaza, it was completely empty. There were restaurants there with nobody inside, and it should have been a line outside on Father's Day. And then yesterday, I met with two mothers who don't know where their husbands are, and they were telling me about how they had to explain to their kids why their fathers weren't there for Father's Day. The personal toll that this takes on people, the economic toll that this is taking every day on our city, where you know we have sectors of our economy that are completely dependent on immigrant labor. And then the political toll, because what is the message that is being sent by Washington? The question is, what happens when the federal government comes in and seizes power from the governor of a state? What does that mean? What message is this? Are we the trial case? It's been made clear that other democratic cities will have to pay in the same way that we do. But we know how to persevere in LA, and we know how to take a negative and turn it into a positive. And so I would just like to invite you for something else. Number one, please participate in charter reform. We're just getting up and running, so you will know about opportunities well in advance, and we would appreciate your active participation. But also, you know, we launched this effort in April. We had originally planned to launch it in January, but for obvious reasons it was delayed, called Shine LA, which is really an opportunity for Angelenos to get involved all around the city, preparing our city to welcome the world, and with beautification projects. And this is nothing new. I thought those of you who are around during Mayor Villaraigosa's term, you remember that he did the citywide beautification efforts, and I'm sure Garcetti probably did this and other mayors, but none of them were waiting for the world in the way that we are. The All-Star basketball game in February, the US Open for golf for women in May, the World Cup in July, the Super Bowl. Come on, keep me with it, Erin. Erin knows all about this because she was heading up this work. And then in 2028, the Olympics. I did see Mayor Garcetti a couple of weeks ago. I was very excited to see him, but I'm like, what were you thinking? You did all of this and then you left. But anyway, you know we're very honored and very excited at all of the potential that our city has. And so I would just invite you, the Shine LA that we're doing next Saturday is going to be focused on downtown to address the vandalism that happened, the horrific graffiti that was everywhere. What hurt me was the defacing of El Pueblo and the defacing of the Japanese American Museum. How can you do that and say you support immigrants? Those are two iconic symbols of immigration. And it just goes to show that people that do that are not concerned about the rights of immigrants. So please join us next Saturday for Shine LA. Let's get downtown back in shape. A lot has been done over the last couple of weeks by city workers, but now we need Angelenos to turn out, and I hope that the neighborhood councils will be there to turn out every month while we prepare our city to welcome the world. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all that you do on behalf of the city.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miran Kalecki, and I'm the budget advocate for Region 3. Today, I have the pleasure and opportunity to introduce our Councilwoman Katy Yaroslavsky, represents the Los Angeles 5th District, a community she's been a part of nearly her entire life. Elected in 2022, she currently serves as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, vice chair of both the Energy and Environment and Board of Preferred Powers Committees. She sits on the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games and Rules, Elections, and Intergovernmental Relations Committees. She was also appointed by Mayor Bass to the Board of Directors of Los Angeles Metro. Her approach to leadership is guided by the belief and the major challenges we face. Homelessness, climate change, economic inequality are connected and must be addressed through coalition building, equality, and inclusive in community engagement. I would like to welcome her to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Miran, for that warm introduction. You're an incredible example of what civic leadership looks like, and I'm grateful for all of the work that you do on behalf of all of us. And thank you to Mayor Bass for being fearless and fierce in these very challenging times. You are everywhere all at once, and we see you, and I know personally I take great strength from the strength that you're bringing on behalf of our community, so thank you so much. I want to acknowledge also Josh, my 6-year-old who's here. He was very interested in learning about the budget, as he's learning basic math, and my Chief of Staff, Aaron Bromagem, and my District Director, George Akopians, for doing all the work. I want to acknowledge the budget advocates and everyone who helped make today possible. The co-chairs, Glenn Bailey and Jay Handel, and this year's Budget Day Chair, Kay Hartman, a constituent and friend of mine. Thank you for your community leadership. You've assembled a powerhouse program and a room full of people who care deeply about how this city is run, so thank you for pulling this off today. And to all the neighborhood council members here, your presence, your time, and your advocacy matter, and we are grateful for the partnership. You're the connective tissue of Los Angeles, our civic first responders, if you will. You're the ones who field the calls, who show up at meetings, who ask hard questions. I see your work, my team sees your work. I know my colleagues would say the same thing, and we are grateful and deeply respect all the ways in which you give, so thank you. As Miran said, my name is Katy Yaroslavsky. I have the privilege of representing Council District 5, which is part of the West Side and Mid-City. I chair the city's Budget and Finance Committee as of January 7th of this year. It's an honor to join you today, especially at such a consequential moment. Because let's be honest, this was not a normal budget year. This was one of the toughest fiscal cycles in a generation. We inherited nearly $1 billion shortfall, softening revenues, and growing pressure on the very services that hold the city together. But before I get into details on the budget, I think we should zoom out for a second. A lot of people think of the budget as a spreadsheet, a document, a dense block of numbers. But the truth is, as you know, the budget isn't just a financial tool, it's a moral document. It's how we translate our priorities into services, our vision into reality. Do we want clean streets, safe neighborhoods, open libraries, fast 911 response times? That's the budget. And yet, for all of its importance, our city budget is also incredibly constrained. It's not one big flexible pot of money. It's a complicated patchwork of general fund dollars, special funds, voter-mandated allocations, grants, fees, and more. The general fund, which is the most flexible part of the budget, is also the most fragile. It pays for the basics: LAPD, LAFD, street services, sanitation, parks. It's what people see every day when you walk out your front door and you experience your neighborhood. Whether or not that's a positive or a negative experience largely depends on these services. And this general fund money is also deeply dependent on the economy. Over 70% of the general fund comes from just 7 sources: property tax, business tax, sales tax, utility users tax, hotel tax, real estate transfer tax, and parking fines and user taxes. When the economy slows, so do these revenues, and that's exactly what we've seen this year. Business activity has declined, the real estate market has cooled, tourism hasn't fully bounced back from COVID, and even our most reliable source, which is property tax, lags behind economic conditions, so we're only starting to see that impact now. That revenue volatility makes long-term planning almost impossible, and it turns every budget cycle into a scramble, a mad dash. And that's the context we all, as a council and a mayor, walked into this January when I took over as Budget and Finance Committee Chair. Within weeks, we were hit with wildfires, atmospheric rivers, a growing deficit, and mounting pressure on city operations. As we prepared to receive the mayor's proposed budget, Council President Yaroslavsky and I released a joint letter outlining 10 key priorities to guide this year's deliberations, and I know the mayor issued something similar around the same time. I was glad to see that many of those echoed in the Budget Advocate's white paper, including calls for a multi-year budgeting framework, building the reserve fund, a responsible approach to liability costs and managing those, maximizing the value of city assets, identifying new revenue streams, and improving transparency and public engagement. We also urged serious attention to long-term operational reforms, because it's not just about numbers, it's about how the city does its work, which includes restructuring operations, reforming how settlements are handled, accounting for personnel vacancies, modernizing outdated technology systems, and most of all, building a budget that reflects the true cost of service delivery. Then came the mayor's proposed budget. You know, in a typical year, there are very few changes that are made to the budget that we receive from the mayor. This year was different. This was a layoff budget by necessity, one that proposed eliminating more than 1,600 city positions. We knew as council offices, because we get a lot of the calls from constituents for basic city service stuff, we knew that those positions, we had to find a way to restore them however we could, because otherwise we were going to be getting a whole lot more calls about potholes and tree trimming and streetlights being out. So instead of tinkering around the edges, we took a different path. We had the luxury of a few weeks, so we met with department heads, the CLA, the CAO. We went line by line to look for opportunities to close the gap without gutting services. We asked questions about vacancies and realignment. We looked for internal savings. We pushed departments to rethink operations, consolidate where appropriate. And most critically, we asked, what does it truly mean to protect core services? Because, for example, protecting public safety doesn't just mean funding LAPD, it means making sure the streetlights are on, that sanitation crews can clean alleys, that housing inspectors can respond to code violations, that libraries can stay open so kids have a place to be. That's why we focused on restoring jobs, not for the sake of numbers, but to preserve function. We were ultimately able, in partnership with the mayor's office, to save over 1,000 positions, and those jobs are going to keep departments running in neighborhoods safer, cleaner, and more responsive. But I want to be clear, I don't want to sugarcoat it, there are still over 500 civil servants set to lose their jobs. We couldn't restore every position without putting at jeopardy the structural integrity of the budget, and when you're operating from a place of deficit, you have to structurally solve for that. We are having conversations, ongoing conversations with labor. We hope to retain all of those positions over the next couple of weeks and months, and you may maybe hear a little more about that from our CAO, Matt Szabo. But if economic concerns and uncertainty remain, which we have every reason to expect that they will, we'll be back again here next year, which is unacceptable. So, we need to reimagine how the city funds itself, which means updating our outdated fee structures, some of which haven't changed in decades. You want to know why it takes so long to get your street light fixed? It's because the fee hasn't been increased for 30 years. So you can't do the same quality of work and have the same level of service without looking at those things. So we are. We're also exploring new revenue sources that aren't tied to economic booms and busts. For example, we're going to better leverage underused city-owned land and buildings. We're working on activating partnerships with the private and nonprofit sectors. The mayor spoke a little bit about the work with foundations, but also the private sector. And then using technology to reduce duplication and modernize service delivery. We need to make better long-term decisions, not just cut and paste fixes. That's why Council President Yaroslavsky and I launched a new advisory group on the city's finances and budget, which is going to be comprised of a cross-sector of civic leaders, budget experts, and community voices who will assess the city's long-term fiscal health and advise the council on structural reforms. We're finalizing members now and expect to convene later this summer, if not sooner, well ahead of next year's budget process. And the goal is simple. We need to stop lurching from crisis to crisis and build a more sustainable, equitable fiscal future, move from a place of financial scarcity to one of abundance. And to do that, we need you. Neighborhood councils have a really important role to play in all this. You're the eyes and ears on the ground. You know where services are falling short in real time because you see it. You see those gaps. You ask the questions others might avoid, and that's really essential. So we need your advocacy, we need your input, and we need your partnership. Because this isn't just about spreadsheets, it's about making sure that every Angelino, no matter where they live, can count on their government to deliver the basics. The budget is how public policy becomes public service. If you care about your neighborhood, you care about the budget. So I want to leave you with this. We are not powerless in the face of deficits. We're not stuck with a broken system. But it's going to take all of us, inside and outside City Hall, committing to a smarter, more accountable, and more collaborative way of doing business. That's what this moment demands, and I'm ready to meet it with our neighborhood council budget advocates in close partnership. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. It's not going to be easy, but I know that we're going to do it together. So have a great Saturday. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Bailey. I'm the other co-chair of the Budget Advocates. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, who at last year, for those of you who are here, may have known we introduced her as brand new, because like just a few days on the job, General Manager of the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. So this year, I get to introduce her as the newest General Manager of the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. She's been here involved a year. I just want to reflect that the difference has been night and day, the cooperative and engaged involvement under Carmen Cheung's leadership, not just for the budget advocates, but for other aspects of the Neighborhood Council system, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and welcome you back for your second annual, and hopefully many more Neighborhood Council budgeting. Carmen Cheung, General Manager, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment.
Thank you, Glenn. All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right. I love that back and forth. My name is Carmen Cheung, and as Glenn mentioned, I'm the General Manager here at Empower LA. Thank you so much again for being here at the annual Budget Day. As the mayor and Councilwoman Yaroslavsky mentioned, there's a lot going on with the city. Ever since the start of the new year, there's been uncertainty about things about the budget, immigration, what's going on at the federal level, and around the world. But we know one thing is for certain, and that is the power of people, community, and neighbors right here in Los Angeles. We've seen how powerful we can be when we as a community show up, use our voice, and advocate for what's important to us. And that is exactly what you all here do as part of the neighborhood councils. Across 99 neighborhoods every month, at least every month, if not weekly, community members gather together, discuss issues that are most important to their daily lives, use their voice, and share their thoughts with elected officials. And the Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates take it one step further, honing in on how our city budget impacts these important issues by researching innovative solutions to difficult problems, creating impactful opportunities for neighborhood councils to become greater advocates. And as budget advocate Jay Handel likes to say, budget equals services. So on behalf of Empower LA, I would like to thank the budget advocates for putting this event on year after year. Thank you for gathering us together at such a critical moment. Everyone involved with the budget advocates, can I please ask you to stand and be recognized for everything you've been doing and continue to do? Yeah. Stand, please. Thank you so much. I'd also like to give a special thank you to city staff, commissioners, our Board of Neighborhood Commissioners here, and elected offices who will present to you all today and provide valuable information about this year's city budget and the city budget process. And of course, I'd like to thank my staff who are also here to support today's event. As a reminder, if you're here for the first time, the annual Budget Day event was created originally by Mayor James Hahn to help implement Section 909 of the city charter. Budget Day is an opportunity for you to not only learn about the budget and its process, but also to have an input. This helps create a space for engagement, and I really encourage you, not just in addition to today, but every day, to continue to get involved. Throughout the course of the year and the past years, our staff have been working alongside the budget advocates, supporting to present budget 101s across the city, because we really want to make sure, as our speakers have said, that all Angelenos have a deep understanding of the budget and can lift their voices. So I'm excited to share that in the coming months, especially for neighborhood council boards that just all finished elections this year, the new boards being seated July 1st, we will be offering learning sessions, welcoming you into the mix in the city, but also helping develop your advocacy skills, develop your budget advocacy skills with workshops and learning sessions. So just as a reminder, your voice matters now more than ever. We know that this budget process was not like any other for many, many years, and that there were difficult decisions to be made, but it is vital that you are part of shaping these decisions and impacts, and today is a really wonderful first step, especially for those who just got elected and are here for the first time. Thank you. We look forward to today's outcome of events with the robust panel, regional breakouts, and budget advocate elections this afternoon. So thanks for continuing to engage, enjoy the event, and we are excited that you'll continue to serve as the people's voice at City Hall. Thank you.
Hello again. So I was next to introduce Board of Neighborhood Commission President Joy Atkinson, but last night we were notified that she's not feeling well, so we wish her the best wishes for getting well. So with short notice, we appreciate it, the Commission Vice President, Commissioner Len Schaefer, will be giving greetings from the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. For those of you don't know, the Commission, along with the department, has great impact on developing policies and the processes that affect neighborhood councils. So we do pay attention to them and welcome them as part of this process. And we do have several of the commissioners here today, and I trust you'll be able to introduce them. So with that, the commissioner from the South Valley and president of the Tarzana Neighborhood Council, Len Schaefer. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope everybody got here in time for breakfast. That's one of the major reasons I come early. But in any event, okay, Commissioner Waters, Randall, okay, we've got, well, our two commissioners, we've got Karen and Randall. Will you both stand up, please? Oh, and Doug Everhart is here also. Doug, where are you? He's hiding someplace, but way back there. He's hiding some. He's waving. Oh, I'm sorry that Joy couldn't make it this morning. She does this much better than I do, but we're working on last minute things. I'd like to find out if there's, or let me know, any newly elected board members here today. Oh, we've got some. Okay. First, I want to say, don't believe everything you hear, whether good or bad, about the commission, okay? In any event, as was just noted, the commission is the policy-setting organization for the neighborhood councils, But we try and do more, and I'm glad to say that we're getting more involved and more active in certain things. Right now, we are reviewing our own rules and procedures because this is something that hasn't been done for quite a few years. And so we thought we'd bring them up to date and get into the digital world and things like that because of our use of these various processes. We're also, having listened to neighborhood councils, we're reviewing what we call our censure and removal policies, to combine it into something that is more useful. We heard neighborhood councils talk about the fact that it's too cumbersome, too complex, and too slow. So we're trying to improve on each of those so that neighborhood councils are better able to process certain things and not have to rely on the commission or on the department to manage some of their complex issues. Look for notices. We're going to have some public meetings. Once we get a few more things done, as we have in the past, we'll be looking forward to information and the views of neighborhood councils as to how they think we're doing on improving this process. The commission is always looking for ways to, I'm trying to read my own notes. They don't come out quite the same on this little device as they did on my computer. We're working on some various things to help with neighborhood councils. We want to help convey to the new charter commission ideas, thoughts, and such that neighborhood councils have. We'll be gathering information or attempting to gather information from neighborhood councils and pass it on to the commission. Many of you don't know, but the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners submitted a letter to the commission requesting that a neighborhood council member, past or present, be appointed as one of the 5 last members of the commission. It appears, I don't know if the letter did any good, but it certainly appears that a member of neighborhood councils has been appointed to the commission and will be able to present our views ongoing. We're working on reviving something that I've always enjoyed, and that's the Empower LA Awards. And hopefully we'll get to work with the Congress of Neighborhoods that will be coming up later this year and do the awards like we did in the past. For those of you who are new, it's a time for neighborhood councils to toot their own horns, tell us what they've done, and I'll let the commission sit around and come up with some ideas as to who the winners might be as to activities during the year. We definitely want to be responsive to the needs and ideas, et cetera, from neighborhood councils. Our meetings are open. It's a great place for you to come to learn what's going on, to hear what neighborhood councils are saying. One of the best things is the public comment from neighborhood council members. You can hear the cheers, you can hear the complaints, and it's a good place. I believe that we are the only commission that still takes public comment by way of Zoom. And so that's a great way for you to join. It expands our meetings. You don't have to come down to City Hall at 6 o'clock in the evening and find a place to park, or come down at 3 in the afternoon and find a place. And we promise that you'll get more than 1 quick minute to say something, okay? So do come to our meetings and learn what's going on. I want to close with something. A friend, his name is Rafe Sonnenschein. Many of you may know him, others may not. He's a political scientist, a professor of political science. He was at one time head of the Pat Brown Institute. He was one of the executive directors of the 1999 Charter Reform Movement, where neighborhood councils were born. He has participated in educating neighborhood councils through Civic University. His comment with regards to the neighborhood council system is, it was somewhat of a last-minute inclusion in the charter amendments. Nobody quite knew what they were going to be. But from my point of view, having worked with neighborhood councils actually since before a 1999 charter when USC at the Davidson Center was having meetings discussing what these things might be. I think that neighborhood councils have developed, and they're turning out, for the most part, pretty okay. And I hope we continue to do that through the years. Welcome to Budget Day. I hope we learn a lot today.
Good morning. I am Connie Acosta, Neighborhood Council Budget Advocate. And it is my great honor to introduce the Los Angeles City Administrative Officer, Matt Szabo.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right, now we get to dive into some of the details of our adopted budget. So I'm going to run through. I don't believe we're doing Q&A, but I'll try to provide as much information as I can and address as many of the issues as we can. But so we'll start, and we can move to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of the adopted budget. We will talk about some of the assumptions that were made in presenting the budget, in putting the budget together. We will revisit what you all are very aware of, the $1 billion deficit, the reasons for that, how the budget was balanced. I do want to say, for the record, the budget is balanced. So there is no $1 billion deficit. Some in this room may argue with that, so we can have that conversation. But moving forward, we have a balanced budget. The budget has various consequences that we'll discuss, and then we'll discuss some of the risks and concerns moving forward, as well as some of the items that really need to be addressed as we look for ways to prevent the city from finding itself in the situation that it found itself this past year. So we will, let's move to the next slide, please. Overview of the budget. The adopted budget is $8.178 billion on the general fund side, $13.9 billion overall. If you look at the percentage there, that is a 1.8 percentage increase, which is far less than our average. We typically have revenue grow at about 4%, 4.1%. So we're looking at a 1.8% increase on the general fund side, and that also includes some extraordinary one-time revenues that would not be counted on year over year, including drawing on the budget stabilization fund. We can skip the next slide. This one is out of order. We'll go to revenues. Thank you. So on the revenue side, as Councilmember Yaroslavsky mentioned briefly, we are dependent on 7 economy-sensitive sources of revenue. And within those economy-sensitive sources of revenue, which include property tax, sales tax, our hotel tax, business tax, documentary transfer tax, parking occupancy tax, and utility users tax. The most stable by far is property tax. That represents more than $2.8 billion of our general fund revenue, about 35% of our general fund revenue, and it is the most stable. What that means, however, is that 65% of our general fund revenue is not property tax and is highly sensitive to temporary swings in the economy. And that's something that we need to think about as we move forward. A city as large as Los Angeles that has a tax base as large as we do, how do we better control for the volatility and protect the city from facing deficits if there is temporary downturns in business tax and sales tax and hotel tax that comes with expected and cyclical swings in the economy. We can go to the next slide. So when we're looking at this current fiscal year, which is going to end in the next 2 weeks, our revenue did come under what the budget, under the adopted budget of $8.033 billion. We'll finish the year down about 110 million, down 1.36%. So the overall, by the year end, with the revised anticipated receipts, that represents just a 3.2% increase over the 23-24 actual receipts. And then of those 7 economy-sensitive sources of revenue that we just discussed, it only represents a 2.2% increase. So for this current year and then our next year, we are projecting, we actually did come in significantly lower than our 20-year average, and we're again projecting that we'll be coming in below our 20-year average for fiscal 25-26. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So for fiscal 25-26, our estimated receipts, as I said, is $8.178 billion, a $254 million increase from the original estimates for fiscal year 24-25. If you take out some of those one-time solutions like the $29 million transfer from the Budget Stabilization Fund, it really only represents a 2.8% increase over the adopted budget. Next slide. And then now looking, I'm sorry. Is there? Can you go back a slide? Did I skip one? Yep, that one. Okay, this is way too small to see, but I think we submitted this presentation, so you should be able to access it. This runs through, and so I'll read it and help you. This runs through those 7 economy-sensitive revenue sources. So for property tax, we are projecting 2.2% growth. Business tax, 1.1% growth. We're actually projecting a decline in sales tax. For a hotel tax, less than 2% growth, and parking occupancy, a 4% growth. We're seeing some rebound there. We're also seeing some rebound in documentary transfer tax, the taxes on sales of property. Why are we seeing that? Principally, number one, we did see some initial reductions of interest rates. That's number one. Number two, we believe that the ULA tax is, although still having certainly an impact on the high-value property sales, is becoming more normalized in the local economy. So we are seeing some good news on property sales. But again, these economically sensitive revenues are growing by about 1.9%. Less than half of our 20-year average of 4.1%. Now we can go to the reserve fund. Next slide. And then for this one, we'll go, if you can go 3 slides. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. Thank you. So for our reserve fund, and we're going to talk about the reserve fund. The reserve fund and city reserves is the single most important area of the budget to protect against volatility, to provide the necessary resilience that the city needs to continue services, to continue staffing levels as we face economic headwinds. We know that we're going to face economic headwinds. It happens, it's cyclical. We can't predict exactly how bad it will be, but we can predict that it will happen. And so having substantial reserves is essential to both protect the city against fluctuations and volatility in revenue, and over expenditures like we just faced, for example. My office just issued a report that as of Friday, we are projecting that the total extraordinary cost, unplanned cost of our response to the ICE-related protest is $32 million. That's $32 million that wasn't considered in the budget. It will be principally a reserve fund impact. The council did ask us in the first action they took on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then in our report we're recommending coming back with a plan to restore the reserve fund. But it is, between this, the fires, there will be needs to rely on reserves for extraordinary expenditures, and also for fluctuations in revenue. We have a 5% reserve fund minimum policy in our financial policies. That 5%, as we started this year, we plan to start at just over the 5% minimum, 5.07%, $407 million. And as we faced both lags in revenue and extraordinary expenditures over the course of this current fiscal year, that reserve fund dropped to 3.22%. As part of the $1 billion deficit, the $1 billion gap that we had projected, that I reported in March, that assumed making a sizable appropriation to the reserve fund to get it back to that 5% level. It's an absolutely essential component of our budget. So we assumed we would make a large appropriation. That was a big chunk of the $1 billion deficit. This current, the adopted budget has a reserve fund at $420 million, 5.13% of general fund revenues. That appropriation ended up being $121 million, which is unusual. We typically do not make a general fund appropriation to the reserve fund. We did it this year. So let's go to the next slide. This is the next slide, please. So this is what we discussed in March when we advised the council that the city was facing a $1 billion gap coming into fiscal 25-26. The numbers changed slightly, but the component parts were essentially the same. We were projecting that revenue would come in below historical averages. We knew we were facing a new normal in liability claims. This last year, or this current fiscal year, we will have spent nearly $300 million in liability claims. For the past several years, for the past nearly decade, we had been paying about $100 million in liability claims. So we knew we had to pay more for that. We knew we were going to have to restore the reserve fund because it had dropped below our 5% minimum. We were subsidizing heavily, we still are, our solid waste fee, our trash collection program for residential trash collection. That subsidy, without the actions that the council did take this year, would have reached $200 million this year, as in the program just to operate would have required a $200 million from the general fund, even though the program is supposed to be run based on fees to the customers it serves. And then there were anticipated increases with pensions. Next slide. So how did the budget close the gap? A variety of ways. We made some significant reductions, and I do need to be direct and honest. Those reductions will have service impacts. They absolutely will. The mayor and the council did the work that they needed to do. They made the tough decisions to balance the budget and to close the structural gap to the greatest extent possible, and then applied their judgment, which they're elected to exercise, on which are the services, which are the positions that we could most afford to lose or would cause the least amount of damage to city services. So the first major cut was eliminating vacant positions. This budget eliminates 961 vacant positions. It's important to note that that is in addition to 1,759 vacant positions which were eliminated in fiscal 24-25. On top of the vacant positions which are eliminated, as the Councilmember Yaroslavsky mentioned. There are nearly 600 positions that are up for layoff. The mayor had proposed about 1,600 potential layoffs. The council was able to restore about 1,000 of those positions. So 573 positions are still up for layoff, and the savings is assumed in the budget. So if there are other solutions to prevent those layoffs, we need to find ongoing savings. There were also other reductions that were made. There were a 10% reduction in the general city purposes funds, major reductions in contractual services and expense accounts. And the council committee even went into areas where you would not expect reductions to be made, like the fire department. Now with the fire department, they didn't remove service from the stations. They cut some other positions that in doing so, those staff, those firefighters will be redeployed to the stations and save money on overtime as well. As I mentioned, we're moving forward with the process of increasing the solid waste fee, getting that close to cost recovery, and although the waste fee, and this is an important point, raising the solid waste fee doesn't generate direct general fund money, as in we're not raising the fee to balance the budget. We are subsidizing a program, and what I mean by subsidizing is a program is supposed to run based on the fee. The city, the general fund, pays the pensions and healthcare for the employees that work at that program. Typically, a program that is fee-based will reimburse the general fund for the healthcare and the pension costs, the related costs. They have not been doing that, and they have not been doing that for years. So in raising the fee, they will begin to be able to actually pay for the cost of pensions for that program, and so that will help the general fund indirectly. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so what does this mean, the structural gap? So we have just published an updated four-year outlook. This outlook represents what the structural gap or surplus is in each of the four next years, subsequent years. The mayor and the council largely closed the structural deficit. We are projecting a $91 million gap heading into fiscal 26-27, a complete balance, structural balance in 27-28, and then 2 years of surpluses in 28-29 and 29-30 of $238 million and 453 million. Now, what is that based on? In addition to, and we can go to the next slide, in addition to the changes that were made in the budget, well, I'll address that first. There are key assumptions that are required or that would need to play out if we were to keep the budget structurally balanced. Number one, the cuts that were adopted in the budget need to be implemented and maintained. Any additional services would add to the ongoing expenditures. Number two, we're not projecting a recession. If we project a recession, and this is typical, unless we have information that is clear that we are in a recession and how long that recession may last, we're not going to project a recession if it has not yet materialized. We are projecting very modest growth in 26-27. So I had said we're projecting we have 4.1% as our annual 20-year average. We would project 2.7% growth in 26-27, followed by 3.3% growth in 27-28 before returning to our 20-year average of 4.1%. That's what's built into that outlook. If we hit a recession, all of the numbers that you just saw absolutely change. And then also built into those assumptions are no new labor costs. And then what that means is once the current contracts expire, we just build in a 2% assumed escalator. So in 27-28, when the current contracts expire, if you could go back to the slide, the last slide, please. So you see how it really opens up. That's also along the same timeline that the labor contracts expire, and we build in a 2% increase. So I just need to point out, if we just increased salaries 2% a year, every year forever, we would likely have a lot more money to deliver services. But that's a separate issue that will be discussed as we discuss the subsequent successor labor agreements. Okay, we can move 2 slides forward. Economic risks and uncertainty. So in addition to what we already know, the January wildfires will have ongoing impacts to sales tax, business tax, and property tax. We're assessing those. The tariffs are extraordinarily concerning, and not only are tariffs inflationary, but to the extent that they trigger tourism boycotts from our close partners and friends, Canada and Mexico, that affects Los Angeles significantly. Our hotel industry has not recovered from COVID, and this is not helpful for federal policies that trigger tourism boycotts on top of additional inflationary impacts. And then, as I said, the erratic tariff application, it's uncertainty, it's a risk. It could make projects more expensive. It could impact every aspect of how the city delivers services. And then we're seeing it play out right now, the disruptive immigration enforcement and deportations. The impact that has, as we're seeing it play out right now. We just were in a curfew for a week in downtown Los Angeles that impacted every business and restaurant in downtown dramatically. Overall, citywide, restaurants, businesses, stores, the fear factor is causing a dip in activity. And if that is a prolonged condition, we would be highly concerned about that. And then just on the deportation front, when we're talking about our workforce and we're talking about, for example, all of the construction that we're going to need in the wake of the fires, well, 40% of the construction industry is estimated to be undocumented. So if there is a massive effort on deportations, you're going to be draining the workforce for an industry that is essential to the recovery of Los Angeles, and that is going to just make prices go up even more. So these are areas that we're closely monitoring. I will very quickly go through financial policies and then wrap up with a few recommendations. I will particularly very quickly, because this is also going to be small. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is reserve fund. We have met our financial policy of 5%. Budget stabilization fund also meets its financial policy. We did withdraw from it this year, but it was within policy because revenue was below historical growth. Our cumulative reserves are shy of 10%, so we did not meet that. It is a goal. I would like that 10% reserve goal to be more than a goal. Our one-time revenues for one-time expenditures, we met that policy. That's important for structural balance. And we've met our debt service financial policy as well. I'm going to close by just talking about some of the things that I know have been a topic in this group for some time. Thank you. But we find ourselves in a challenging financial situation again, and the truth is, it is not extraordinary. I would like to say it's extraordinary. It is not extraordinary. We've seen this happen again and again. And it really should, as we reflect, as we emerge again from another financial challenge that required us to make difficult decisions, it should require us to think about changes in policies and procedures and standards that would limit the likelihood that we'll be here again. the next time we face economic headwinds, because we know we will face economic headwinds. So as the city is considering amendments to the charter, to the city charter, and other structural reforms, there are some items that we should take up, and then we should start with financial resilience. As I said, more than 70% of our general fund revenues derive from 7 major taxes, all of which are highly susceptible to changing economic conditions. And we don't have the luxury to operate like a general law city that gets all of its money, most all of its general fund money from property tax, which is the most stable and reliable of our taxes. So we really need to look at raising the required reserve fund minimum in the city charter and or our financial policies above our current levels. And that would provide the necessary resilience against economic volatility. Number 2, the truth is, and this is not, I'm not singling out or pointing fingers, but the fact of the matter is our contracts with our employees are the most impactful financial agreements that we make. Personnel costs make up 80% of our spending. But the process is currently, as it's currently designed, it does not provide very much opportunity for open deliberation until the end. Now, there is a reason for that. It is important for negotiations to take place in a confidential setting. But these are also extraordinarily impactful financial obligations. So reforming how we consider our labor contracts and other long-term financial contractual obligations to provide the full council and the public at large greater access to the issues, justifications, and long-term impacts of these agreements is critical to planning for and maintaining long-term fiscal health. And finally, base budget evaluation. As we are considering a multi-year budget, regular and systematic consideration and implementation of structural and operational efficiencies to the base budget is essential. On a single-year cycle, we don't, outside of a financial crisis or outside of financial challenges that we just had, it is rare that there is a deep and serious evaluation of the base budget. We are generally talking about what or not we're going to add, what we're going to add or not, rather. And we would be much better served to have a systematic evaluation of the base in a regular cycle. I went on a little bit long. I apologize for that, but there's a lot of information. Thank you for your patience. Have a lovely day.
Hello. So Rick Cole is the Chief Deputy Controller for the City of Los Angeles. Rick has spent 3 years in public service as Deputy Mayor in the City of Los Angeles, as City Manager in Azusa, Ventura, and Santa Monica. He is widely recognized as a national leader in local fiscal, environmental, governance, planning, transportation, and housing policies. Former Mayor of Pasadena, he was elected recently as Pasadena City Council member. Rick also teaches at Pepperdine University School of Public Policy and Occidental College's Urban Environmental Policy program. Rick's time as a Los Angeles employee is coming to an end. We've learned a lot from his directness, and he will be missed. Thank you, Rick.
I appreciate following our City Administrative Officer, Matt Szabo. It's been my pleasure to work with Matt going back to my days as Deputy Mayor for the budget. He took the job after I left. He's a brilliant and extraordinarily experienced resource for our city, and he has a terrific staff in the City Administrative Office. The problem is not Matt Szabo. I can tell you that. The problem, as he finished, is structural. And that's what I want to talk about today. You've all heard the definition of insanity. What's the definition of insanity? When I was first my first day on the job for the city of Los Angeles was December 21st, 1986. I'm that old. It was the day that Richard Alatorre was sworn in as the first Latino council member in a generation. And I was his senior deputy and acting chief of staff. And shortly after taking office, we met with the then CAO and the then CLA. And I was on the Pasadena City Council at the same time. And I learned that the city of Pasadena, which was 1/40th the size of Los Angeles, had more cash in the bank than the city of Los Angeles. So this is not a new problem. The city of Los Angeles is always spending money before it comes in. We've had good times, we've had bad times. But what has not been present in all that time is true structural reform. So my boss, Kenneth Mejia, started in January 2023, 2.5 years ago, warning about trouble ahead. And unfortunately, because we were bouncing out of COVID with a real resurgence of the economy, because we'd just gotten a big infusion of federal dollars, because our reserves were at record highs, people said, oh, Kenneth, you're new here, you don't understand things, your projections are doomsday projections, you're being theatrical, you're one of these grandstanding politicians. Unfortunately, he was right. And he was right because if you looked at it, we were coming up on renegotiating every one of our labor contracts. These are inflationary times. This is a pro-labor city. There was going to be significant raises. The COVID bounce back was not going to last forever, right? We went like this, we came back, but it wasn't going to keep going like this. We knew that. Federal funds were running out. COVID was over. Not over, but the pandemic and the way it changed our lives was returning to normal. So you could see the direction. And we didn't know there would be devastating fires, but we said in the age of climate change, there will be more disasters. And unfortunately, the predictable came through. What I've learned about risk management in 40 years of public service is the predictable is preventable. If you know that something is going to happen, as Mr. Szabo just said, we know there will be economic headwinds. So the challenge is, how do we get out ahead of it? And so the reason we're in the shape we're in is not because of the current mayor or the current council or the CAO. The reason we're in the situation we're in today, where we had to close a $1 billion shortfall, where we had to look at laying off as many as 1,600 staff, where even without laying off more than 600, and I hope it'll be a lower number even than that, we still have eliminated 2,700 vacant jobs. And those jobs were vacant, yes, because it's very hard to fill a job in Los Angeles, but they were needed jobs. The vast majority of them were needed jobs. And we're seeing the impacts when we walk out our front door. We're seeing the broken sidewalks. We're seeing the dark streetlights. We're experiencing the long wait times. We're seeing the grass grow higher in the parks. This is our lives. This is our future. And despite all the other crises, the massive fire in Pacific Palisades, the ice raids that are taking place on our streets, if you take a step back, we're on the road to slow decline. And as a Pasadena resident and a Pasadena City Council member, I am deeply worried because Los Angeles is the economic engine and the cultural heart of Southern California. I was born actually in Detroit, although I grew up here in Southern California. And I know that the suburbs of Detroit said, oh, it's fine that Detroit declines, because all those good jobs will just come across the border. They were 100% wrong. Because the suburbs are really subsidiary to the economic engine of the whole area. This is the city that runs LAX. This is the city that runs the port. This is the city that has the largest municipal utility in America. This is a great city that deserves great governance. And here's the problem. And I'm going to talk about the problem, I'm going to talk about the solutions, and I'm going to talk about how we get to the solutions, which is the hardest part of all. I'm just going to take another moment on the problem. My last days as deputy mayor here 10 years ago, I had to buy a very expensive bottle of tequila for the chief of staff, Ana Guerrero, my good friend, because I was quoted in the LA Times for something I had been saying to neighborhood advocates, to anyone who would listen. Los Angeles is not designed to work. And when it got quoted in the LA Times, it sounded like sour grapes, like, Los Angeles is not designed to work, it sucks, I'm going to be city manager of Santa Monica. And so that didn't look good for the deputy mayor to be, saying that. What the LA Times didn't quote was the second line of that, which is Los Angeles is not designed to work. That it works at all, and that it works as well as it does, is because of the heroic efforts of staff members and elected officials and citizens like you. That's why it works, is we make a broken system work because we can't afford not to, but we're not fixing the broken system. People like Matt Szabo, people like Ben Ceja, people like Malika Phillips, people like those are ones who are holding this city together, despite the fact that it wasn't designed to work. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, that's not a criticism, that's a historic fact. 100 years ago, the people who designed this building and who designed the government to live in this building were afraid of one thing: corruption. Because Chicago was corrupt, New York was corrupt, St. Louis was corrupt. All those big eastern cities were corrupt as a dog's hind leg. And so Los Angeles was going to be different. We were going to design a system where politicians could not be corrupt because they would have no power. It'd be run by professionals. We'd have a civil service system that was ironclad, where you couldn't hire your uncle and you couldn't fire your political opponent. We would have commissions that would run things, not elected people, because you can't trust elected people. Let's have commissions. We had a library commission, a Parks and Recreation commission, a police commission, a fire commission, and the city was going to be run by commissioners. Well, as it turned out, that didn't work out all that well, and guess who ended up running the city? 15 people up here. And Los Angeles is the only big city in America that doesn't have a real chief financial officer. Part of that responsibility falls on Matt's shoulders. Part of it falls on my boss, Kenneth Mejia's shoulders. We have a Department of Finance. The mayor has a deputy mayor for budget. We don't have one person in charge of running the city's finances, and we have $1 billion deficit. Those are connected. We don't have a city manager or a chief operating officer who actually makes sure that 44 departments and 45,000 people are working together across department lines to be effective and to think long-term and to manage this city. So the problems are structural. Los Angeles was not designed to work. If it was designed to work, we would have a chief operating officer. We would have a chief financial officer. We would frankly have a bigger city council for the size of our city. We have to redesign Los Angeles to work, which requires bold systemic changes, structural changes in Matt's language. So what does that look like? My boss, Kenneth Mejia, 33 years old, elected when on election day was his 31st birthday, had not set foot in LA City Hall except twice, and both of those were for protests. So he comes with fresh eyes. And he's proposed not just his ideas, but ideas that have been out there for years. Ideas that commissions have recommended, ideas that make sense but have never gotten implemented. What are some of those ideas? Again, a chief financial officer, a 2-year budget, so we're not spending a huge amount of time, as Matt was saying, just adjusting at the margins, but rather thinking through. And the 2-year budget process needs to be informed by performance, right? What I've learned over 40 years in government is spend more money on stuff that works and less money on stuff that doesn't, right? That seems pretty obvious. But instead, we just take for granted that base budget. Another of the reforms that Matt raised and that we support is more transparency for labor contracts. You know how it goes. The negotiations go on for months, and then the contract is posted 48 hours in advance, and the vote is unanimous, and it's done. And no one's had a chance to even read the contract to understand it. The last contract was so confusing that it turns out that we are paying pension money into the pension fund for cops on non-pensionable benefits, because those pension benefits, according to the contract, are eventually going to become pensionable, and so we're putting, I think it's $63 million this year into the pension system that we don't have to put in, except that we'll have to put it in later, so we're putting it in now. $63 million from just jamming through these contracts without fully understanding the fine print. We absolutely need structural reform, as our CAO has just said. And what I want to finish with is, okay, commissions have been saying this, the neighborhood budget advocates have been saying this, professors of government and public administration have been saying this. Why doesn't it happen? Why are we locked in this cycle of insanity? Why are we facing laying our hardworking civil servants off? Why are we seeing the results of shrunken services on our streets? Why aren't we changing? And I think we get the government we deserve. That's what 40 years have taught me. Unless the public moves from the sound bites and says, we want structural reform, reform is going to have to come from the bottom up, because the system is too powerful. It's not the problem of the people in the system, it is the system. And unless we insist on changing the system, unless we design Los Angeles to work, it's not going to work. The problem is the design, and you are the answer. Now, you are 1/100th of 1% of the 4 million people, but you are the most informed, you are the most strategically located, and you need to build a strong coalition. The neighborhood councils need to lead. They need to bring the churches, the business community, the labor unions, the working people, the middle-class people of Los Angeles and say, we want a city that works, so we need a city government that works. We need to make the structural reforms necessary so that Los Angeles is as great a city as the people who live here. It's as clean a city as we want it to be. It's a well-maintained city as we want it to be. And that means fundamentally changing the way we do budgeting, not by monkeying at the edges, but by saying, how can we spend $2.5 billion and not know where it went on homelessness, right? Why didn't we? By the way, that money was not wasted. It went somewhere. But it didn't necessarily go in a way that was coordinated and effective and measured, right? To say, okay, we're going to give you X number of dollars. We want to see the results. We want to see how many people you housed, for how long, how many of them were able to stay, and what happened to the people that fell through the cracks. That's the kind of government we need. It is possible. It is not something inherent in government, that private sector always does things well and government is inefficient and slow and bureaucratic. No, because we have a 100-year-old system. We have a system of hiring people in this city from 100 years ago, when we hired for clerk typists on how fast they could type. And we have that same system. So we need fundamental structural reform. That should be the banner. Now, I know it's not very sexy. It doesn't make for a great tweet or TikTok. But that's what this city needs. That's what this city deserves. And that's my message as I wind up my third stint at Los Angeles City Hall. And I give you my very best blessings and wishes to carry on this battle. You have an ally in me. You have an admirer in me for what you're doing today as volunteers. And let's do this. We're going to welcome the world in 3 years. Let's make sure that after they leave, we have a city we're proud of. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Kay Hartman. I'm the parliamentarian for the Budget Advocates, having previously served as co-chair. I am the chair of the Budget Day Committee. I am the president of the Palms Neighborhood Council. I'm very happy to see all of you here today. The Budget Advocates were started by Mayor Hahn as he looked for a way to implement Section 909 of the city charter that says annual city budget priorities. Each neighborhood council may present to the mayor and council an annual list of priorities for the city budget. The mayor shall inform certified neighborhood councils of the deadline for submission so that the input may be considered in a timely fashion. The budget advocates are one of the avenues the neighborhood councils have for delivering these priorities. It all starts with the regional breakout sessions that will be happening after this plenary session when we hear your concerns about the state of the city's services in your neighborhood. Those concerns are collected into a report that we will share with the mayor and with the city council, budget and finance committee, and they feed into the questions we ask the heads of the city departments in preparation for our annual white paper. Right now, I'd like to recognize the budget advocates that are in the room today by asking them to stand and thank them for their service. Budget advocates, please stand. Thank you. Brian, where's Brian? Yep, here they are.
Good morning. I'm Brian Allen. I am a member of Granada Hills North Neighborhood Council. I am the current treasurer for the Budget Advocates. I'm here to do one thing, and that is to share with you who has helped provide this session. I think everyone can appreciate that there has been quite a bit of information presented today, and I think it's good food for thought. Some of it I agree with wholeheartedly, and some of it I question, and that is the job of the Budget Advocates. And the Budget Advocates, in case some of you don't know, the Budget Advocates are an organization that was established for the purpose of doing and helping the councils who have the responsibility and have the authority to look into the city budget department by department and helping them do that job. The Budget Advocates are 36 people, or hopefully are 36 people, and they are all part of the neighborhood councils. Every single one of them are appointed by the neighborhood councils because they are budget reps. And those budget reps are then used to elect budget advocates, for which there are 36, or are allowed to have 36. We don't always get them all, but we hope that we can get 36. So these NCs that provide the Budget Advocates also provide the funds that make this possible. This is not a cheap venture to put this on, and it is extremely valuable to the people that hear it because lots of information is presented that is valuable to everyone to consider. So these neighborhood councils that are on the screen now all provided funds. They provided the funds that are necessary to put this on. Those councils that are represented today, if you would stand, we'd like to recognize you. And we, the budget advocates, thank every single one of you for contributing to the budget advocates to allow us to continue to do this. Thank you.
So every year, the Budget Advocates ask one of its new members to speak at Budget Day. And this year that falls to Adrian Fernandez from the Central San Pedro Neighborhood Council in Region 12.
Too tall. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Adrian Fernandez. I am the Budget Advocate of Region 12 and also the Budget Representative for Central San Pedro. Region 12 consists of the great neighborhood councils down at the end of the 110 freeway, Harbor Gateway North and South, Northwest San Pedro, Coastal San Pedro, Central San Pedro, Harbor City, and Wilmington. Back in late fall, when I was still trying to navigate my way through the neighborhood council system, I first learned about the budget advocates through my own Region 12 representative, Cheryl Ackerbaum. I was curious and I wanted to know more about the budget advocates. I took the time to thoroughly research the roles and responsibility of a budget advocate. Reading through several of the past white papers to gain clear understanding of their priorities and the types of recommendations the budget advocates have made to the mayor in previous years. I was appointed as a budget representative, then elected as a budget advocate. I became the budget advocate right after the department interviews. But however, I truly feel that just sitting in a budget advocate meeting offers a real opportunity to dig deeper into understanding the finances of the city of Los Angeles and how the budget impacts everyday Angelenos. During my time as a new budget advocate, I've had the meaningful opportunity to engage and listen with other budget advocates across the city of Los Angeles, listening to their thoughtful input on a wide range of pressing concerning issues impacting their communities, such as finding funding for animal shelters, issues relating to parks, rising costs and liabilities, funding for CERT training, and critical emergency responses such as the Palisades fires. With that, I want to just give a huge thank to Glenn and Jay for leading this term. I've had a real pleasure learning from you guys on the history of budget advocates. I also want to thank Moran and Kay for allowing me to promote this day. And just say I'm really excited going into the next term, and being a part of this organization that looks to call for accountability, transparency, and transformation to the budget process of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Hi. So the moderator for this year's panel discussion is Frank Stoltze. Frank's is the Civics and Democracy reporter for LAist. You can hear him on the radio at FM 89.3, and you can read his reporting at laist.com. We're grateful to have him join us today and the rest of the panel also. So, yeah, Ben, Stephen, Julie. Where did Julie go?
Is Julie coming up? Okay, great. Thank you for having me here, and let me introduce our panelists. Ben Ceja is an Assistant City Administrative Officer for the City of Los Angeles, where he provides strategic advice and recommendations to the mayor and city council on the city's fiscal condition, financial planning, and future needs. Actually oversees the preparation of the budget, revenue forecasting, long-term financial planning, debt issuance and administration, investor relations, and citywide risk management. He also serves as the CAO's management lead on major initiatives, including the LA Convention Center expansion project, and the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Ben's in the middle. And Stephen Cheung serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the LA County Economic Development Corporation and its subsidiary, the World Trade Center LA. In this dual role, Stephen heads the organization's vision to build a coalition of one economy for all to benefit Los Angeles. Finally, Julie Butcher retired from union organizing with SEIU Locals 721 and 347 in 2015, following more than 30 years of work representing city workers. Julie, welcome. Let's start out by just asking you all to comment on the budget. What do you think of the budget? We'll start with you, Ben.
Ben?
Yeah.
Good morning. Ben Ceja, as I introduced earlier, with the City Administrative Officer. It's good to be here. I've actually been part of the budget development process for over 20 years. The first budget being my 2005-2006 budget for then Mayor Villaraigosa. I think this was actually one of the most challenging budgets we've ever had to deal with, not just because of the gravity of the gap that Matt went over, but because of the different issues that we were dealing with, the fires that broke out while we were still in the process of reviewing budgets that departments had submitted. So in essence, we were reviewing budgets for needs of departments that were submitted back in November. And yet we are here in January, February, dealing with and reviewing those budgets, knowing very well that circumstances for many of the departments had changed. So we also had to kind of pivot and start dealing with those issues as well, to try to incorporate how we were going to reprioritize items in the budget to make sure that the resources, very limited resources we had, dealt with those issues. So I had to say that in the 20 years that I've been working on budgets, the most challenging budgets by far. It's still a work in progress, I'm going to say. We have the adopted budget, but as the mayor, the budget chairwoman mentioned, we have still about 614 layoffs that are baked into the budget, if you will. And the goal is to reduce that even further as we go along in the fiscal year. So it's just, to sum up, very challenging, very tough, and still a lot of work to be done.
Part of the reason it's a work in progress is there's a conversation going on with labor about potential furloughs or potential concessions that would save those 600 jobs. Julie Butcher, you're a union leader. Should labor come to the table and help save these 600 jobs with furloughs or other methods?
Look, it's
Make sure you move the mic next to you.
It's been a while, and I'm actually very, very retired. So labor never left the table, and the public sector never walks away. So those conversations are ongoing. They will be ongoing. The fact is that we supported neighborhood councils many, now a couple of decades ago, because we counted that the folks that are customers of the services that the city delivers should have an active say in the delivery of those services. And that's what the city needs to do. It needs to figure out exactly what it is at core, what are really core services. And nobody knows that better than you. Nobody cares about the city more than you all. Nobody loves this city. Nobody's going to count on what the future looks like. So trust your labor. I mean, this labor partner stuff, make it real. We had, again, envisioned neighborhood councils, including much more of the voice of labor, and frankly, it's still seen as sort of, an auxiliary to check in with. The folks that deliver the services in this city, Rick is absolutely right, it's a miracle. So a couple of things, I think. One is that you should do this in November when the city actually gets to work on a budget and not after there already is a budget, because it's, So in anticipation, it's November when the city starts working on the budget. If you can figure out multi-year budgets, bless you. This is a city in crisis. It's in financial crisis. Expenses are up, revenues down. Both are predicted to, I mean, I understand that it's balanced and that's wonderful, but you can expect a crisis. There are Marines on the streets of Los Angeles, so we're in a crisis. No city has ever been great, will ever be great, where people are sleeping on its streets. Somebody needs to be in charge and act like this is a crisis. The fact that people live on our streets is a crisis, and we have to deal with it in such singular focus. Somebody needs to, every penny that is spent for lawyers fighting against figuring out how to solve the problem, there are places that have figured this out. Put somebody in charge. You've all sat in the rooms where there are 14 homeless organizations and 28 different opinions about what you should do to solve the problem. I remember 1994 when Richard Riordan discovered that city workers would put aside their own broken glass when the Northridge earthquake hit to take care of somebody else's broken glass. I also remember 1984 when the city is the only city in modern history, I believe that's true, to make money on an Olympics. So we should learn from ourselves. This city has always dealt best when faced with a crisis. And so this emergency, these emergencies, the way that this city has risen to protest against the kidnapping of our neighbors, that's Los Angeles. And this is a city that always figures it out after we've tried everything that didn't work. And so is 8,400 the right number for police? What needs to happen at that level? And you all know this city better than anybody. Try not to do the same things over and over again, I would urge. Jackie Goldberg way back used to tell a joke that was the answers in Los Angeles government were, we've always done it that way. We've never done it that way. We tried it once, it didn't work. We have company coming, and this is a city that has to show that it's capable of its own future. So we need to learn from ourselves, and that's.
So if you were a labor leader today, would you recommend that there be concessions in order to save these 600 jobs?
The contracts are, again, the reason that you're talking about, in California, the education code requires sort of much more public bargaining. The employer has to present, I think sort of all the proposals need to be, and I don't know that that's produced any better a result. I'm not sure. We've done sort of community-based negotiations where actually city unions have bargained over issues that management, argued were not mandatory subjects of bargaining. Again, maybe some folks would love to be done bargaining, but the other thing is that the thing that's, whereas, I don't know if Matt left, but in every time that we have saved the city financially, it's been the workers who have figured it out. And so it's never not been, the workers of the city have never not figured it out. And again, every efficiency that's been offered up, that came from the folks that do the work because they love this city.
Okay. I think I heard an answer in there somewhere. Stephen Cheung, you have the big picture. What's the economic outlook for the region, and how's it going to affect cities' finances?
So one, it's good to be back. So a bit of context, Ben and I actually worked together about 20 years ago. I was the liaison to the Department of Labor Empowerment for Mayor Villaraigosa. So I started my career really working with the neighborhood council. Since then, I've moved into different roles, and right now my role is to oversee the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation for the region. Separately, I also run the World Trade Center Los Angeles, which is a subsidiary of LADC. And that role is really to look at the international trade aspect to hopefully be able to attract international companies to open up operations here so they can bring good jobs to the local region. We recently just did an economic briefing, and one of the things I took notes when Matt was presenting, basically the budget is based on the stability of the future. You really have to make sure that there's no recession. I don't have good news. So it's been a tough year, as we all know. But to your question about the budget first, yes, it's a tough budget, as Ben was mentioning. However, this is not unique to Los Angeles or Los Angeles City. We know the 88 cities are also dealing with this. But in my current role, we work with a lot of economic development corporations around the nation, in fact, around the world, and everybody's also dealing with it. We had to deal with the fire, but everybody had to deal with the budget cuts when it comes to the federal administration. A lot of folks don't understand the impact that the federal budget actually has on the state and local economy. For example, in our state of California budget, about $140, $170 billion of our budget is dependent on federal money coming in. So any decrease will impact our services. There are additional complications, as we know. Tariffs been really difficult. So I got some numbers and details, but consumer sentiment, when it comes to projection, the Fed's been projecting a decrease in terms of their GDP growth projection by a few points, not a lot at this point, but it can be a bit challenging. Right now, as we're looking in the future, what we see is that the businesses are expecting increased rise in costs, and they're actually holding their planning pattern because of the fluctuation in the market. When that happens, it's not good for our economy, especially for a place like Los Angeles, where we're so dependent on international trade. We saw during COVID that the Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, they really became the center of attention. You saw Biden here all the time. You saw Buttigieg here all the time when we have about 100 ships, outside of the San Pedro ports, right? But by the way, once the LA region was able to solve the issue, where was Anderson Cooper? Where were they in terms of thanking the folks in LA actually solving this issue for the nation? But that tangential aside, one of the most important aspects is that we start seeing the connectedness of Los Angeles and the importance of Los Angeles to the rest of the national economy. And as we're looking at it, as we're looking at the projection, what we're seeing is the tariffs right now are only on hold temporarily. So by July 9th, we're going to figure out whether there's going to be another set of tariffs with the rest of the world. And about August is when the China decision is going to come through. Why I want to focus on China is that people don't sometimes understand that China is LA's #1 trading partner when it comes to import-exports. So when there's a huge drop, it actually decreases the volume of goods coming into the Los Angeles region. And when that happens, it's not just the ports. We actually did another report just recently that the port complex, alongside with the trade and logistics sector, which includes truckers, the rail, warehouse distribution center, and your beneficiary cargo owners, so your Walmarts, your Targets, and so on, combined together, this entire region will be truly impacted. In our estimate, the trade and logistics sector over the last year and a half supports about 2 million jobs in the region. So when you have a decreased trade number with China, the reverberating effect for the entire economy is going to be huge. So that's a long way of saying in August, we're going to truly see how bad the situation is going to be. But based on the projection from a federal level, from a state level, from a local level, it's not looking very stable.
Do you think the projections in the budget are too rosy? You sort of hinted at that with the beginning of your answer.
Yeah. No, I don't think the budget is rosy at all. I think they're being realistic in terms of what needs to happen. You've seen, as we already discussed already, the scaling back and cutting of the positions that are available. And as Matt was mentioning, about 80% of the budget goes to personnel costs. So I think it's a very fiscally conservative and actually prudent thing to do. However, it's going to impact your services. So I think what Julie mentioned as well, you have to look at what the core services are. What do we want to do as a city? What do we want to do as a region so you can invest in it properly? Because as we're looking forward, that fluctuation is not giving the private sector and businesses enough stability for them to really have that positive outlook. And when that happens, you're going to see a holding pattern. So we're not going to see the economy increasing over the next year or two.
And Frank, if I could just respond to a couple things. Like Julie said, labor has not, left the table. So we are having communications with labor, and historically they've always been there to have conversations about, well, the budget has been adopted. It has some things that maybe nobody wants. So what is it that we can work together to try to adjust what's in the budget? And that's happening today as well. But the budget needs to actually have the actions that will make sure that the expenditures play out in the best way possible. So we can't just wait for those labor proposals or that conversation with labor to finalize and to get some agreement there. We need to have items in the budget, and those happen to be the elimination of vacant positions and the elimination of filled positions that may result in layoffs. But so those are the tools that need to be, or the items that need to be in the budget, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue talking with labor, and which we're doing. And then with respect to the kind of the economic outlook, I think timing is just a big of a factor when we're putting together the budget as anything else. When the mayor puts together the budget, we're looking at revenues through really the end of January, maybe February, because she really needs to start making the decisions on what's going to be in the budget for delivery in April. All the final decisions really have to be done by the end of March. So we don't even have like the full March data at that point. The council gets the benefit of maybe one more month of revenue, but really it's not, for this instance, we didn't have the information that Stephen has now, say, based on kind of more recent factors and tariffs and things of that nature. So that's where the reserve fund comes into play, because we really need to have robust reserves to handle those situations when they occur, if they occur down the road.
How worried are you about the tariffs?
Very, very worried, because when we work on projects for the city, many of the projects that are going to start design or start construction were based on numbers from years back, before the tariff numbers, before the tariff issues came to be. So we already know that some of the existing projects that we have, at least even on paper, are already probably underfunded. So it's a matter of making sure that not starting anything new, so that we have enough resources to finish what we already started.
Let's talk about the liability budget for a second. It's historically been about $80 million a year. Is that about right?
Yes.
Yeah. This year, liability payments soared to almost $300 million. This budget allocates $180 million. There are critics, I think, in this room who say this is an example of what's really an unbalanced budget. Are we lowballing liability payments?
Well, I mean, the thing with liabilities is that we still are trying to figure out what the new normal is. When we came out of COVID, during COVID, a lot of the cases had stalled. There weren't any trials happening, and so the first couple years out, we thought it was just a backlog of cases that are coming through. Now, it seems like there is definitely a higher new normal, definitely higher than the 80 that historically had been budgeted. And so that's why it was really a prioritized item for the mayor, and then eventually for the council, to put in more resources for liabilities, because if we don't have those in there in place, it ends up coming from the reserve fund. Whether it's enough or not, it's going to be, to be determined. But we feel at the very least, we're not just in it for 1 year. This is a city of over 200 years, so we're going to be in here for the long haul. And if we could, at the very least, make a dent on what the new normal is in the next fiscal year, probably for the following year, we could then learn from that and see if there's any more that can be placed in there. And just 180 is what's in the actual liability account. We have another $20 million in the unappropriated balance for extraordinary liabilities. So really, we have about 200 million for next year.
Julie, the Budget Advocates White Paper says the mayor and city council have approved unsustainable, budget-busting labor agreements over and over again. What's your response to that? And what do you think about the proposal to make the contract process more transparent? In other words, where the people would have more information as it's being negotiated?
Well, again, the folks who pay the bills and receive the services are the folks that should have the greatest say. When we were first talking about neighborhood councils in 1990, whatever that was, the labor in Los Angeles city worker unions advocated that, that neighborhood councils should be elected and should have genuine authority. We're not afraid of the public making decisions about what city workers should earn. So these are good jobs. These are great jobs. These are jobs that, that put kids through college and buy houses in Los Angeles. And these are jobs. When I started working for the union, trash men didn't retire. They died. And if we were lucky at the end of their service, we could get them a job where they would do some paperwork or you know, ordering or something like that, and work that needed to be done. But that was when trash was picked up by hand, and they had decent pensions, but they never enjoyed those pensions because they died. So yeah, they make a decent wage. And so the other thing is that there are every service that you can imagine, there's somebody that does in the city. And so there's a whole variety of jobs that are great jobs and jobs that are less great jobs. And you should know all about that. The provisions of how pensions are paid, that you know, the fine print, that's the contracts. The CAO's office actually operates a tremendous website of all of the labor agreements online. They're boring as hell, but that's the same way that the Councilwoman rightly said that the budget is a moral document. Labor agreements are, and in Los Angeles, they're very old documents. We've been bargaining these contracts for again, from before there were trash trucks that had little automated hands that went up. And workers of the city have always been at the forefront of working to make better services, more accessible services, because again, there's mutual interest. It's not like it's a secret that you know, helps create jobs, but have also been sort of willing to be creative about, for instance, we advocated hiring from making sure that folks. It used to be that those clerk typist jobs that Rick talked about, that the people who took those tests were mostly women back then, but people who graduated from high schools in Los Angeles. And they went and they took the test, and they started as very young, very, dare I say, inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, workers. And so, I mean, that kind of, we actually worked with the city to free up entry-level qualifications for how to hire people more quickly, more locally. You know, you don't want to, you know, relocating to Los Angeles is a ridiculous thought. You're going to hire, you know, we need to hire people who already live here, and again, who, you know. So once the city starts hiring again. And then the other, you know, I don't really have thoughts about reducing liability, except that it's the same issue. It's accountability. It's maybe that needs to be, you know, the transparency of that has actually been helpful, and where that gets budgeted from. I mean, if the police department is responsible for it, then, you know, let's not beat around the bush. The other thing is that, just as a historic plug, the more civilianization in the police departments, the lower the liability. And that would be my, I would actually put money on that. You know, just again, having more accountability and more transparency. And then, you know, there's not another city department, I don't think, where liability is not budgeted to the department. Just saying.
Can you comment on that, Ben? How does that work?
No, she's right. We don't have like line item liability accounts per department. I think with the exception of sanitation, because we do budget in some of their funds, some of their special funds to pay for some of the sanitation related liability matters, like you have trash truck, damaging property, things like that.
Mailboxes.
Exactly. So she's right. The budget liability account is one kind of miscellaneous account for any type of liability from any department that is funded by the general fund. And then what happens is once that settlement or the judgment is paid, we do account for like what it was paid for, but it's not something that comes out of the department itself, with the exception if it's like a salary type of settlement where an employee was asking for back pay or things like that, then that comes from the department's budget because that's where the salary accounts are in.
I'd like to make this a dynamic panel that would include questions from you. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can come around the red rope over there and come to the podium here in front and ask a question. So I invite you to do that. Let me ask this question. Stephen, the city was hoping for $2 billion from the federal government for buses during the Olympics. What challenges does the city face in terms of federal funding, not just for these buses, but in general? And do you worry about how the city is going to pay for the Olympics?
Yes, I worry all the time in terms of how we pay for things. So, one, we don't know the current situation with the federal government over the next few years. You've already heard that the president has threatened to withhold funding for California as punishment. And currently, we have about $48 billion we're requesting for reimbursement for emergency services, especially related to fire. So we don't know whether we're going to get reimbursement. This is up and down the states, especially down here in Southern California. So if we're not getting that chunk to start anticipating that we're going to get additional funding from the federal government as they are reducing the departments, I don't think we should count on it completely. What we're hoping to do is to make sure that there is a shared sense that this is not LA's Olympic Games. This is the US Olympic Games. So everybody should have pride in it, and hopefully that's when other states and other regions will actually take ownership so that they would actually provide some funding. However, when we're bidding for the Olympic Games, this region did mention that this is going to be a more self-funded situation rather than like most Olympic games in Tokyo or in Paris or even in London, where the federal government or the national government, and most of the time they're capitals, so we're not, so you don't get the same type of attention. So a lot of that is subsidized by those kind of support. As we're moving forward, we know that LA 28 is busy raising funds in order for them to be able to pay for the operation for a lot of these things. However, there will be requirements from each of the city of Los Angeles, but also the other host cities to contribute significantly. And this is where, if we're able to make a good case, hopefully we can, and then Julie mentioned this before, you're absolutely right. 1984 was the last Olympic. Actually, it's the only Olympic Games in modern history that any Olympic Games have actually been profitable. So LA is the only example. So hopefully we can take a page from that and actually become profitable again. But that's a long way to answer your question. We hope to be able to receiving federal funds to support, but it's also about leveraging not only for the Olympic Games, but what happens afterwards.
Yeah, President Trump has threatened a lot of cities with reduced funding for various reasons, Sanctuary City being one of them. Ben, is that on your mind? Do you worry about that? Are there particular funding streams that you're worried about from the federal government?
I mean, I think not just myself, but the entire city and city council mayor are worried about actions being taken by the federal government with respect to potential funding sources that the city and the state, for that matter, have received. I think there was an article today about, federal Department of Transportation withholding funds from states that don't participate in enforcement action on immigration enforcement actions. And so things like that obviously will have, if those policies actually take effect, will have tremendous ramifications for the state and then the counties and then further down the cities. So it is very concerning. It is very concerning. And so that's why, not to sound like a broken record, that's why having things like flush reserves are so important for us. because we can't predict everything that's going to happen, but as Matt mentioned, as Rick mentioned, we know that things are going to happen. The magnitude, we may or may not be able to address them with the reserves we have, but it's something that we're continuing to work with, not just locally, but with the county partners, with the state partners, and our federal partners as well. There's going to be issues coming forward next year with regard to things like what we refer to as the consolidated plan, which is a number of resources that are provided to the state, the county, and the cities for services like economic development and housing. And so those are areas that we're obviously very concerned with, because if we lose federal government, federal government funding for programs, it doesn't mean that we can just start tapping into the general fund to continue those programs. We'll have to look to see what, if any, of those programs need to be adjusted or even curtailed if we do lose some of that federal funding.
Frank, can I add just a component
please.
to that? We have to look at it besides just funding to the city itself, because when federal cut is happening, I was talking to some of the hospital partners, Cedars-Sinai, Kaiser Permanente, research grants being cut. So when that happens, you actually don't have the development of new type of technology or resources that can spin out into companies. So it has long-term impact. Talking to the LA Community College, the regional consortium, the 21 community colleges here, the CSU, the UCs, all of the universities are at risk for research grants. So, and additional funding as well. So combined together, this is going to be just a compounding issue all the way around. So when we're talking about federal cuts, it's not just to the city, but to every single system. And the last thing is a lot of folks don't look at nonprofits like ourselves. We are very much dependent on a lot of these grants that flow through the cities and the counties and the various jurisdictions in order to go to the nonprofits. A lot of them are actually really in trouble right now. So when we're talking about reaching out to the community, you actually need to depend on the CBOs, the community-based organizations, and a lot of them will be facing major, major challenges up ahead because of these federal funding issues.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. A question, sir.
Right.
Say your name and where you're from.
Right. Asad Al-Najjar, Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council, and a senior engineer manager at the Bureau of Street Lighting. The comment I have is, there is a lot of resolution positions, which is strictly funded by Measure M and Measure R, with secured money all the way through 2035. However, what I've noticed is, since the 2020 SIP, the retirement packages and all that, a lot of these positions get eliminated with the regular positions, even though the money is there. I'll give you a simple example. For the transit division with the Bureau of Street Lighting, I have enough funding for 26 positions through 2035. However, because of the layoffs or the cuts and the position elimination, it dropped to merely 11. And every year since 2020 up to now and up to this budget, at least 40% to 50% of the money I send back to MTA. The decade ago, what we did is we saved positions from building and safety, and I acquired structural engineers to fill in the gap. Possibly we'll be doing that. However, what I noticed all the past 5-year budgets, there is no consideration for the resolution positions in which we have guaranteed revenue in the bank through 2035. So why is this money is not being accounted for to save at least the transit divisions within the 5 main departments under Public Works?
Well, that's a very deep question, a very detailed question. Really, just for the people that may not know, resolution positions, we have 2 types of positions: regular positions, which is current part of the base budget, and resolution positions, which are looked at every year. So they're only approved for 1 year, and so they have to be looked at every year. Why is that? And that's typically because we're not the funding behind those resolution positions may not be kind of as permanent as some of the general fund dollars we get. And so every year the city and the mayor have the opportunity to look at those resolution positions. When it comes time to actually filling those positions, though, that becomes a problem for the city. The city, as I'm sure Julie can attest to, has issues with being able to actually fill positions, even in good times, because of the civil service process and other rules that are established that may bog down the hiring process. When that happens and the position remains vacant, we already have budgeted revenue coming in to pay for those positions. Well, what happens is if those positions remain vacant, we have to pay those revenue sources back. And so rather than paying those sources back every year because positions remain vacant, what happens is that, you know, we say like, well, let's provide less positions because it's going to be very tough to fill again. And so that's, I think, part of the, maybe not exactly the reasoning behind your specific, issue, but kind of one of the things that typically happens is we look at, well, we keep returning back money because those positions haven't been filled for years, then maybe we shouldn't have those positions there in the first place. So, I mean, that's some of the logic that goes into some of the budget decisions that you see, and so that's
Thank you very much. And we'll take one more question. Oh, are there people lined up? Oh, okay.
Yes, and I've been here the whole time.
Okay. I don't think you were next, were you? I think it's.
I've been right here when you called for questions.
Let's do a couple more.
Wasn't I supposed to walk all the way? This should be quick.
We'll have a couple more questions. A couple more.
Okay. Okay. No,
You're not next in line. I think that's the consensus. Oh, here we go.
Okay, Gary, please sit down because the line
Oh,
formed
God.
over there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen and everybody, just understand, we only have a couple more minutes, so pinpoint your question. Even if we get 5 or 6 questions, we may be able to answer them after we stop here and people go to breakout sessions. We may be able to get those answers to you. The breakout, please. The breakouts are happening. It's important to the process that we have. But in the meantime, I'm not going to take any more time telling you. Please come up, give us a very concise question, and hopefully you can get a concise answer. Thank you.
Hi, my name is LAist with the Westlake North Neighborhood Council. I hope somebody can maybe answer this question. So last fiscal cycle, Matt Zebzo, I'm not saying his name correctly, he said that a huge portion of why we went into deficit was because there was no calculation of what the increase of wages were for city workers. We're now moving into a new fiscal cycle. We're definitely in deficit, and we're going to increase the wages for hotel workers from $30 to $38 an hour. Have you all calculated those costs if the current increase of wages put us in that deficit by an astronomical amount and now going into a higher amount? Has that been calculated? Has that been actually, the projections of that been calculated first before making this really huge change?
So I'll address one of your questions first. We don't pay for the hotel workers directly. Those are private companies that pay for their workers. So I just wanted to make that clear. With regard to labor contracts, the way we typically approach, if there's a negotiation taking place, if we know what that impact is going to be, and it's kind of a public knowledge of what that impact is going to be, we will put that in the budget. What happens though, sometimes, again, this is a timing issue. Sometimes negotiations are on a different time track than the budget development is. And so by the time those contracts actually become known and the impact has become known, the budget has already been adopted. And so we are dealing with it through our financial status reports, which is a very important document that our office issues, because those are the documents where we try to realign the budget to what the reality is happening. So in those instances, if we didn't account for a labor contract in the budget, then we try to address it through our financial status reports.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Next question.
Howdy, my name is Tess Taylor. I'm the president of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. And the first important thing I want to say is if the sentiments we've heard this morning from the mayor, from Katy, Yaroslavsky, and from Karen Cheung are sincere in wanting the input of neighborhood councils in the communities we serve, they can stop limiting public comment at city council meetings.
Do you have a question about for
Yes,
these folks?
I do, yes. And I want to note that the people of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council passed a resolution that we expect and demand honesty, competence, and responsible stewardship in the management and administration of our public tax dollars. That the city's nearly $1 billion structural deficit exists is a testament to the conspicuous individual and collective failure of numerous elected officials and staff, yet with none held accountable for the shocking losses, allowing their negligence and incompetence to continue unabated. The elephant in the room today is the enormous amount of money that's being diverted from the operational fund of the city to homelessness, and funding that is being held in question by Judge David O. Carter. Yes, I do. How do we get greater accountability from our council members who speak the language of transparency but don't necessarily want to hear us? Now, I know that's hard for you to answer because you're not council members, but we wish to be heard and we wish to be taken seriously. That is my statement slash
Yeah, I'm not
question.
sure it's a question for this panel. It's a tough question. It's greater transparency. They're actually talking about expanding the city council, so there could be opportunities there. So we'll see.
We hope for that very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Stephanie Collins. I'm a local realtor in the area, and this is really about housing for me. With LA's housing inventory up 8.7% in May
Talk a
2025.
little bit closer to the mic.
I'm sorry. With LA's housing inventory up 8.7% in May 2025, how is the budget incentivizing new construction to increase affordable options and stabilize prices across LA?
I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I mean, typically, what I focus on is the city infrastructure itself. Yeah, I'm not sure I have.
I have a small, sort of slightly related answer, and that is, I remember the first time that I saw lobbyists at a neighborhood council meeting, and I thought what a positive direction that meant. I think the question in every neighborhood has got to be WIMBY, not YIMBY or MIMBY, or not whether, but where. And development is going to happen. This is a city that invents and reinvents, and this is sort of, again, what we love about it. There will be development. The question is where it will be and how it will most critically benefit the communities in which it is. And so I'm coining a new term. It's WIMBY, where in my neighborhood, as opposed to, again, every development is met with, we've seen it in every instance, every possible obstacle to why we're not building, as opposed to asking the question, where are we going to put this?
Stephen, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, real quick, not specific about the city, but this is, a statewide issue, obviously. So I think a couple of things that could and should be done, and we've been talking about it, which is basically to make sure the permitting process is not cumbersome, at the same time making sure that the community has direct input. So that balance has always been the difficulty for every single region. As we're looking forward, I think from an economic development standpoint, we know that we cannot continue to basically build our industries and the jobs that are here if we don't have the housing solution. And now a lot of these companies are actually considering going to other places because they can't have affordable housing. Right. So it's to agree with you, but in terms of the solution itself, one key point that everybody's going back to over and over again, is how cost prohibitive it is currently in the state of California to go through the full permitting process. If there's a way to basically streamline the way that they're now looking at Palisades and even Altadena to make sure they're able to to develop housing in a faster way, but making sure also you don't bypass the community process. That's the balance that needs to happen.
Right, perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Hi, Stacy Segarra-Bollinger, Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. So we've heard a lot today about the layoffs that are impending from the city, and we've heard about how this is a really hard decision for the people who oversee our budget. But I can't help but notice that one thing we haven't seen is a reduction in the salaries of our highest paid officials or their operational budgets, for example, their office staff, whereas we're asking for layoffs from departments that serve the city, one in particular, personnel. And as a city employee, I know that it can take weeks to months to get a job that's an hourly position at like $24, $25 an hour. And people working for that amount hourly can't really afford to wait that long for their job to start. But we're seeing cuts from things like that, from street services, from sanitation, which are desperately needed. So could we offset the need for layoffs by reducing the salaries of the highest paid officials and their operational budgets?
Clearly a popular question.
Well,
how
in
mu-
Los
how mu-
Angeles, even
how much does the
even the managers are in unions, so I don't know.
how much does the mayor make?
I'm sorry?
How much does the mayor make?
I don't know.
It's in excess of $200,000. City council makes $213, the mayor makes in excess of that, and the LADWP general manager makes $750,000 a year, while we pay a lot for electricity.
Well, of course, this is an issue in society, right, where corporations are making a lot of money.
I'm just asking if we could offset the need for layoffs of our lowest paid employees by reducing the salaries of our highest paid ones.
Yeah.
That's my question.
And do you want to try and answer that question?
Well, I don't make decisions on the budget. I make recommendations. And
So would you maybe recommend a reduction in the salaries of the highest paid officials to offset the layoffs of the lower paid workers?
I don't think it's within my authority to do that. So, I mean, look, I'm a city employee myself, right? I grew up in the city. I lived in the city for many years. I don't know if I have an answer for you that's going to be satisfactory to you, to anybody else in the audience, because, the way we see it is we have to present recommendations for the mayor and the council to make. And ultimately, it's their decision. It's the mayor's proposed budget when it comes out, and it's the city council's adopted budget with the mayor, making those decisions. We look at it from a point of view of there's certain discretionary items that they could take action on, but for the most part, if there's a contract in place for salaries, we can't just arbitrarily say like, oh, let's cut salaries there. These are negotiated contracts that as Julie said, even some of the highest levels of management are members of a union. So it's not just within our authority in the CO to say, oh, we're going to reduce this department by X because we're going to reduce salaries for their management by Y. It's just not something that we're able to do. And
Okay,
as far
thank
as
you very much. We'll take one or two more questions.
Good morning. My name is Jillian Burgos, and I am arts organization representative and president of the NoHo NC. My question to you is, our controller revealed that when it comes to LAPD that we are not excluding non-pensionable salary increases and bonuses in next fiscal's pension contribution. This could be at least $63 million in savings in overpayments. So right now, police officers are taking home more money in their paychecks because they are not contributing on non-pensionable salary increases and bonuses. However, the city is contributing on these amounts, and they are also covering for the officers' missed pension contributions, thus increasing the cost of the city's annual pension contribution. I know pensions are complex, and no one here wants to touch it, but the pension costs make up 20% of the city's general fund, and someone needs to have the political courage to take this on and recommend that we look at this. So my question is to you is, why has this call from our city controller for a true-up to reverse these overpayments not been explored?
That's a good question.
Yeah. No, it was explored. It's not the city council's or the mayor's decision to make. The pension board is a separate board altogether. It has its own fiduciary responsibility. This item was presented to that board for the fire and police pension, and they decided not to go forward with it. So it's not a call to the city council, the mayor. We actually asked for that. It recommended from our office that it be explored. And ultimately, it was a decision of the board that runs the fire and police pension not to move forward with it for whatever reasons they had. And so we have to abide by their decision. They are the fiduciaries responsible for the fire and police pensions.
But you did recommend that it was looked into? I mean, you make recommendations.
Yes, we told them that they should look into it. They did, and they made a decision.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So your next stop is the pension board. Okay, last question.
Good morning. I actually have a few statements, and I'm just going to go over this very quickly. My name is Vivian Escalante. I am from the second oldest community in the city of Los Angeles, from Boyle Heights, and the most underserved community in the city of Los Angeles. So with that being said, I'd like to know how you feel about the plans for an oversight committee to limit the expenses, liability, and lawsuits that we currently have in Los Angeles, number one. Number two, we talk about the tariffs, but I don't see that we're actually encouraging more small businesses to start up here because the abundance of taxes is just outrageous in California. Number three, when you refer to labor, are you referring to labor unions or labor as in individuals, as we should be hiring more individuals? Let's see, recruiting or restructuring. We really support the restructuring because we really need new departments, stronger leadership with innovative thinkers moving into the future. Lastly, why are we not thinking about public housing and instead giving the key to the greedy developers tearing down our historic properties in the city of Los Angeles, especially in Boyle Heights, again, the second oldest community and extremely underserved community in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
I'll answer all of them. I'll answer your tariff question. So I agree with you completely on that. So one, 94% of all LA County companies have less than 20 employees. 94%. So when the tariffs are hitting us, it actually affects our small businesses and our minority and diverse-owned businesses more so than anywhere in the nation. So that's why this is such a devastating impact that we need to make sure. One of the things that we're also hoping to do is beyond tariffs, how do we make sure we empower our small businesses and the local serving businesses to have more resources? So as the Olympic Games or the FIFA World Cup, or now we have 11 professional sports teams, how do we make sure that they get the procurement contracts and they have a chance of actually this prosperity that's coming into this region? So one of the things that with LADC we're hoping to do is go beyond just the games that are coming, right? Because in a month they're going to be here and they're going to be gone. What about the bioscience industry? What about the aerospace industry? What about all those industries that are here? How do they now procure with our local small businesses? And you can't just basically put the procurement opportunities in front of them. You also have to train them and actually give them resources. So those are the structure that we as a nonprofit has been recommending, not only for the city of Los Angeles, but across all 88 cities and the county as well. So if you're interested, please work with us with LADC. We would love to get your support to make sure we push for these benefits to our local small businesses.
Okay, we've gone way over time, and we appreciate your questions, and thank you to Julie Butcher, to Ben Ceja, and to Stephen Cheung.
Thank you.